Well, Donald Trump was standing at a podium in Miami, cracking jokes about renaming the Strait of Hormuz after himself. At that exact same moment, ballistic missiles were arcing through the night sky over Israel. Not from Iran, from Yemen. The Houthis have officially entered this war. And with that single volley of missiles, the entire architecture of this conflict fractured into something far more dangerous, something we have not seen in modern history. We are now looking at two straits, two choke points, one controlled by Iran, the other now effectively threatened by its most battle-hardened proxy. Between those two narrow corridors of water sits roughly a third of the world's traded oil. That is not a detail. That is the whole story. That is the ballgame. The Houthis spent weeks signaling from the sidelines that they were loaded, locked, and waiting for Iran's order. They appear to have received that order. Israel claims it intercepted the incoming missiles, but interception is not the point. Survival is not the point. Activation is the point. Because if the Houthis now turn their attention from lobbing missiles at Israel to shutting down the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb the way they disrupted Red Sea shipping before, the global economy does not stumble. It collapses into a second choke point crisis layered on top of the one already strangling energy markets at the Strait of Hormuz. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly how we got here, why the Trump administration appears to have never seen this activation coming, and why the economic and military reality on the ground right now looks nothing like the one the White House is describing from behind its podium. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a business rival. You have been squeezing them for months, sanctioning their revenue, bombing their factories, coordinating strikes on their infrastructure, and the whole time, they have a network of allies sitting quietly on the perimeter, armed and waiting. How many times do you escalate before that network activates? How many facilities do you hit before the perimeter collapses inward? Hold that thought because that is exactly what just happened in the Red Sea. Let us rewind the clock to understand how we arrived at this moment. This did not start with Houthi missiles over Israel. It started with a decision, a coordinated U.S. and Israeli decision to strike Iran's industrial backbone, specifically 3 of Iran's largest steel plants, facilities responsible for roughly 70% of Iran's steel output. Steel is Iran's second-largest export category, valued at over $6 billion annually. That was not a military target. That was an economic decapitation attempt. Iran's foreign minister, Araghchi, made the calculation public. He posted that Israel, acting in coordination with the United States, had struck 2 of Iran's largest steel factories, a power plant and a civilian nuclear site, among other infrastructure. Then he added the line that should have set off alarms in every situation room on the planet. Iran will exact a heavy price for Israel's crimes. Throughout the nights that followed, the skies above Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, and Dasht-e Kavir lit up with U.S. and Israeli strikes. Iran answered. Iranian missiles reached Tel Aviv. Cluster munitions found their targets. Drone and missile strikes hit U.S. bases and infrastructure across Gulf nations, Bahrain, the UAE, Kuwait. Explosions echoed through Damascus. And while all of this was unfolding, the Houthis were watching, waiting, calculating. They had publicly laid out 3 conditions under which they would activate: any new alliances joining the U.S. and Israel, the use of the Red Sea to carry out attacks, or the continued escalation against Iran and allied groups. The steel plant strikes checked that third box decisively, and then the missiles flew from Yemen. Let me show you 3 receipts, 3 moves that tell you exactly where this conflict is heading. Receipt number 1, the Houthi activation. The Houthis did not fire randomly. They waited for a specific geopolitical trigger and moved on it with precision. This is the first time they have officially entered the conflict, shifting from declared readiness to active combat. And here is what makes this so dangerous. The Houthis already proved during the Red Sea disruptions that they possess the capability to shut down one of the most critical commercial waterways on the planet. The Strait of Bab el-Mandeb is not some obscure geographic footnote. It is the southern gate to the Suez Canal. If the Houthis decide to blockade that strait the way they disrupted shipping before, you are looking at a second choke point crisis layered on top of the Hormuz shutdown. 2 choke points, 1 war. Nobody gamed this out at this speed. Receipt number 2, the Riyadh strike. While Trump was hosting Saudi business leaders at a financial conference in Miami, Iran launched a successful ballistic missile strike against a U.S. military base in Riyadh. At least 12 American soldiers were injured, 2 of them seriously. And here is the part that should concern every American. We are only learning now about a separate incident from the previous week where 14 additional personnel at the same or a nearby facility were also injured. The total number of injured American soldiers has now exceeded 300. And that figure, given this administration's documented pattern of minimizing casualty reports and controlling information flow, appears likely to be low. The head of Iran's parliament, Ghalibaf, put it bluntly. How can the United States, which cannot even protect its own soldiers at its bases in the region, protect anyone else's soil? That is not just rhetoric. That is a strategic message aimed at every U.S. ally hosting American forces right now. And that silence from the Pentagon was not restraint. It was an admission. Receipt number 3, the Strait of Hormuz toll system. This is perhaps the most extraordinary development of the entire conflict and the one receiving the least coverage. Iran does not just control the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is operating it like a toll booth. Countries aligned with Iran or willing to negotiate bilaterally pay a fee and their tankers pass. Thailand recently completed a bilateral negotiation and has been moving tankers through based on that deal. Countries allied with the United States or refusing to negotiate, their ships do not move. 25% of the world's oil exports flow through that corridor. Iran has turned the most critical energy choke point on Earth into a revenue-generating checkpoint. And Marco Rubio told G7 leaders that the Strait of Hormuz is not America's problem anymore. He told European allies they need to handle it themselves. The United States will help, but the burden is on them. Think about what that means. The country that projected naval power through that strait for decades is publicly telling its allies it has no answer for what Iran has done. If this analysis is connecting dots you have not seen assembled anywhere else, you are already ahead of most people watching this unfold. Hit subscribe right now. This conflict is accelerating faster than any single outlet can track. And you need to be here when the next piece drops. Now let me show you the contrast that defines this entire war. Most leaders, when their country is attacked, respond with force and fury. Iran responded with force and a spreadsheet. While the Trump administration focused on bombing steel plants and declaring victories from podiums, Iran was quietly building a network of leverage points that no single military strike can dismantle. Iran activated the Houthis at the precise moment of maximum strategic impact. Iran seized the Strait of Hormuz and converted it into a bilateral negotiation instrument. Iran launched strikes across multiple Gulf states simultaneously, demonstrating reach the Pentagon publicly underestimated. And Iran laid out non-negotiable terms that tell you everything about where it believes the leverage sits. Keep our ballistic missiles. Keep Shahed drone production. Reserve the right to enrich uranium. Full reparations for war damages. Security guarantees for all allied groups including the Houthis and Hezbollah. Removal of American bases from the region. A formal apology. Those are not the demands of a regime on its back foot. Those are the terms of a power that believes time is on its side. And what is the Trump administration doing? Donald Trump has been caught multiple times claiming productive conversations with Iran that Iran publicly denies are taking place. He manipulated markets at the beginning of last week with fake deal talk, did it again midweek. By Friday, the markets had gone numb. You cannot jawbone your way out of a $114 barrel of oil. While American soldiers are getting injured across the region, while the Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq are in correction territory, while American families cannot afford gasoline, Donald Trump is ripping apart the historic White House West Walkway to build golden archways. He is hosting financial conferences while the base in the host country is getting hit. He is calling the Strait of Hormuz the Strait of Trump. He is attacking NATO while telling allies to solve the Strait crisis on their own. You do not fight a multi-front war with ego and construction projects. You need a strategy, and there appears to be no strategy. So what does this actually mean for you? Oil is at $114 per barrel and climbing. The S&P 500 is at a 232-day low. 10-year Treasury yields are surging at 4.4%. Mortgage rates are heading for record highs. Inflation is accelerating. Gasoline is becoming unaffordable. Billions are being spent daily, while trillions have been erased from the markets. And here is what does not reverse. Once energy supply chains reroute around two blocked straits, once countries start making bilateral deals with Iran, once European allies build independent security frameworks because Washington told them to handle it, those structures do not disappear when the fighting stops. The new routes become the new normal. The new deals become the new architecture. And the old order does not reassemble just because someone signs a ceasefire. Where does this go? 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, managed de-escalation. Back channels produce a framework. Iran gets some demands met. The US gets a face-saving off-ramp. The Houthis stand down. The Strait of Hormuz reopens under some international arrangement. Markets stabilize partially. But even in this best case, the structural changes remain. Iran's leverage has been demonstrated. The Houthi capability is proven. The bilateral toll deals do not unwind. The old architecture is permanently altered even if the shooting stops. Scenario 2, regional realignment. Other middle powers follow Thailand's lead. Bilateral deals with Iran multiply. Gulf states hedge aggressively. European allies accelerate independent defense frameworks. A network of new relationships forms around straits, energy, and security. And the United States is no longer the unquestioned center. Still powerful, still present, but no longer the axis around which everything turns. Scenario 3, escalation spiral. The Houthis shut down Bab el-Mandeb. 2 choke points close simultaneously. Oil surges past $150. The U.S. moves toward a ground invasion of Karg Island with Marine Expeditionary Units, the 82nd Airborne, the USS Tripoli, the USS Boxer, and now the USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Group deploying to the area. Iran responds with everything. Casualties mount, markets crater, NATO fractures. This is the scenario nobody wants to name out loud, but the current trajectory with no diplomacy and no off-ramp points directly toward it. Here is what I know for certain. This conflict will never return to where it was 7 days ago. Even if every missile stops tonight, the lessons have been learned. Iran learned it can control a strait and charge tolls. The Houthis learned they can activate and strike. Gulf states learned the U.S. will tell them to handle it themselves. European allies learned NATO solidarity has limits. And the American public learned that a war they were told would be quick is none of those things. Iran did not start this escalation. The coordinated strikes on steel plants, power facilities, and nuclear sites started it. But Iran appears to be very effective at converting escalation into leverage. And that is the most dangerous dynamic in geopolitics. When the side-absorbing strikes get stronger with every hit, you are not winning a war, you are feeding one. So let me ask you, did Iran outmaneuver the most powerful military on Earth, or did Washington do that to itself? Are the Houthis a new front in this war, or the front that ends it? And is there anyone in the White House who has a plan that does not begin and end with a podium and a lie? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe because the next chapter, whether it is Bab el-Mandeb closing, another strike on a U.S. base, or the futures market open on Sunday night, is coming fast. This story is not slowing down. Do not look away. New Midas merch available at store.midastouch.com. Head there today, get yourself the best pro-democracy gear, and show your support. This content is commentary and analysis for informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial, legal, or geopolitical advice.